Goff up under center, turns, fakes to Jameer, sets in the pocket, throws middle, caught Jamo, 20-yard line, Jamo 15, foot race, over, touchdown Detroit Lions!
Welcome to week 12 of the NFL season. I am Twentyman. This is the Twentyman Huddle podcast. A lot of you guys know the man next to me, Will Burchfield, on-air personality for 97.1, does a pregame show for Fox 2. You got your hands in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I'm kind of all across the board. Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none.
I love that. Will, before we talk about the New York Giants and this week's opponent, let's look back a little bit to week 11, Philadelphia. We have to. It's the thing we do here.
We do.
I know. We got to look at, obviously, a 60-9 loss. Detroit wanted to play better in a lot of areas. What's the biggest concern for Will Burchfield coming out of week 11 in that game?
I think it's been the same concern for me for most of this season, which is the offensive line. And I we all knew, including this regime, that it wouldn't be the same bullying, mauling unit that it had been in years past. When you lose Frank Ragnow and you lose Kevin Zeitler and you plug in essentially two rookies in Mahogany and Tate Ratledge and you shift Graham to center. But now with Mahogany down and with Taylor Decker obviously battered and with Graham hurting in his own ways, as you and I both know just from talking to him in the locker room a little bit, it just hasn't been a strength. And for me, that's a concern because the identity of this team, the backbone of this team, has been the offensive line, the ability to dominate teams in the trenches. And when you see them against the two best offensive fronts they face this year, Green Bay and Philadelphia, the kind of fronts they might have to face in the playoffs to make a run, you get a sense of where they are versus where they were last year. So look, there's time for that unit to still improve. I do think that Miles Frazier could wind up being a boost for this team come December. I look at what Mahogany did last year in very similar circumstances. He missed all of training camp, had not practiced until really October, gets activated right around now, and had to step in for injured Glasgow in week 14, played really well, and then played even better for Zeitler in a spot playoff start. So there's reason to believe that Frazier could follow that same trajectory, but to me, something has to happen for that unit, for this team to get to where it wants to go.
No, I agree with you 100%, and particularly the interior of that line. And look, you had some of the statistics of when they play some of these dominant units, just how they haven't performed to the level that we've seen in years past. Will, in their 6 wins, they've allowed 8 sacks and they've rushed on average about 169 yards per game. Yeah. In their 4 losses, 12 sacks, 3 a game, and the average per game rushing goes down to 70. Yeah. That to me is the huge difference. Yeah. This is a football team that's built on running the football. Yeah. Everything they do on offense is predicated. Yeah. And if they can't do it and can't do it consistently, as we've seen in some of these losses, it's just a whole different operation offensively.
100%. And, I think from the moment that Dan got here back in 2021, he has always highlighted the offensive line as kind of their signature strength. And to me, it was a little telling this week that when he was asked on the radio on 97.1 during his weekly interview to name, in his mind, this team's strength 10 games into the year, he listed a lot of things. He listed their explosive skill players. He listed their quarterback. He listed every aspect of, quote, their freaking defense, even listed some of their special teams coverage units. But he did not list the offensive line. And that was kind of an unstated way of saying that that's no longer really an obvious asset for this team. And I think it was just glaring at times on Sunday night against the Eagles, especially in some of those short yardage situations. I go back to a drive early in the second quarter. They run the ball 4 times, and on 3rd and 1, Gibbs gets stuffed, I think, going to the right by Jalen Phillips and Jalen Carter. And then on 4th and 1, they try running again up the gut, and they run behind Graham Glasgow, Tristan Colon, and Coyote Iwasika, which is not Frank Ragnow, Kevin Zeitler, and Graham Glasgow. And probably not a surprise that Jalen Carter and Ojoro, who's a breakout defensive tackle, kind of collapse the line and get home for the stuff. And then on 4th and goal from the 3 in the third quarter, a similar scenario plays out where, it's a surprise to see Penei Sewell get beat off the right edge by Phillips, but at the same time, I think it was Ewasika who got beat cleanly by Jordan Davis, another mismatch. And because of that, Jared couldn't quite step up in the pocket. He would have had a wide open Brock Wright over the middle for a walk-in touchdown had he had maybe a quarter second or a half second longer to survey the field. Didn't have that time, forces an incomplete throw to a completely covered St. Brown in the back of the end zone. And just in those critical game-deciding moments, you get a sense of how the offensive line isn't the beast that it once was.
They knew they were going to miss Frank
They knew it.
They knew they were going to miss him, but I don't know if they realized they were going to miss him this much.
Yeah.
I mean, when you don't have the best center in the game, it changes everything.
Yeah.
All the way from the inside out. It just changes the whole operation, and that to me is the biggest loss. I don't think they've recovered 100% from losing him yet, and they might not until they kind of figure out the next piece in the center of that offensive line.
It's amazing how frequently he would take on not one but 2 blocks on a given play. Like he would win his first block at the line and then go pick off a linebacker in the second level, and that's how so many of those 2 or 3 yard runs became 10 or 12 or 60-yard runs, and he had Zeitler next to him doing the same thing. So that just cleanness and dominance of blocking hasn't quite been there this year.
You mentioned what Dan said about the defense in every level. How impressed have you been with Sheppard and what he's been able to do? What's been most impressive to you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I all of it, seriously. And you know what? They're doing this right now without their number 1 corner, without their all-pro safety, without at times their number 2 corner, without maybe their number 2 and 3 defensive ends in Marcus Davenport and Josh Paschal, all of whom are nearing return. So as good as this defense has been, it's poised to only get better down the stretch. And, the numbers over the season are obviously impressive, now 5th in the NFL in yards allowed, but especially over the last 4 games. Some numbers for you. Allowed an average of 267.4 yards over the course of this season. That would rank second best in the NFL, and just 4.36 yards per play, which would rank first. And they've played some pretty impressive offenses, at least on paper, during that stretch, including the one they faced Sunday night. And just the way that it has withstood injuries and kept the standard high has been extremely impressive.
Top 10 overall, top 10 scoring, top 10 in the red zone, top 10 rushing, top 10 pass.
That'll do.
Keep going on. That'll do it. What's impressed me the most is Kelvin identifying strengths and weaknesses and playing to them. I think he identified very early on that his linebackers and the depth that he has at linebackers are a strength, along with their versatility. And so what does he do? A lot of teams are playing nickel defense, 60% of the time now? Detroit's playing at 37 last I checked the percentage, because it's hard to identify where the blitz is coming, if it's coming with your linebackers, who's dropping into coverage, who's coming, and how to identify, pre-snap those looks and where guys are going to be. And just realizing that, tailoring his defense to make that, the centerpiece of it. And then just getting great play from guys that just step in. Thomas Harper, Whiteside, Arthur Mollett, guys we'd never heard of. What was the Legion of Whom? They nicknamed them. And to still get quality play. And you talked about it. They're going to get DJ Reed back probably this week. It sounds like it's trending that way. Malcolm Rodriguez, you can do some packages with him, adds to that linebacker depth. And Marcus Davenport's on the way. Paschal's on the way. So to me, this is a championship level defense. And we haven't been able to say that in Detroit for quite a while. Yeah,
this is almost an inverse right now of how the seasons have typically gone under Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, where the offense has been leading the way. But this year it feels like by the end of the season, the defense will be this team's calling card. And, if the offense could operate at a top 10 level instead of maybe top 3 or top 2 as they've been in the past with this defense, that might be good enough. And I love your point about the linebackers, because this is a throwback defense. You don't see NFL teams, really football teams of any kind these days, down to Pop Warner even, deploying 3 linebackers on almost every single snap. But Anzalone, Campbell, and Barnes have all played at least 90% of the snaps this year. They're the only team in the NFL that has 3 linebackers who have played at least 500 defensive snaps, and no one else comes even close. And to me, That's the biggest reason why they've been so stout against the run. They can stay in base defense largely because of Derek Barnes' versatility, but also Brian Branch's versatility, his ability to come down and cover guys in the slot when he needs to. But that has made them a really difficult team to run the ball against, and it allows them to make offenses most of the time one-dimensional.
And Ansel's a pretty good
Ansel can do it
too.
Yeah,
and I think
no doubt.
Campbell's improved.
Yeah.
He's still got some way to go. He wasn't asked to do that a lot at Iowa. That's something he's kind of developing, and he's getting better at it. So I just love the versatility of that unit.
Hey, one more for you before I forget, just about the run defense.
Yeah.
I think the three best running backs they faced this year, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, if that feels fair enough.
Yeah.
Those three guys against this defense, 57 carries for 209 yards, a 3.7 average. I mean, they're making all-pro, all-world running backs look average. That's a hard thing to do.
Very hard thing to do. Offensively, they seem to have locked something here.
Yeah.
In JMO.
Yeah.
And we've seen it now a couple weeks in a row with these crossers. We're so used to the down the field threat with him, and obviously that's still going to be a big part of it. But getting him more involved in the short and intermediate, just getting the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
It seems like once Dan Campbell took over play calling, that seemed to be a bigger emphasis.
I think we were all expecting and excited to see that this year based on the way they talked about JMO in training camp, based on the way they used him in camp. And for whatever reason, that version of him kind of disappeared over the first 2 months of this season. And it's been really invigorating to see it come back, because if you can get him the ball, as you said, in stride, he is a threat to score from anywhere on the field. And a lot of times those 5-yard, 10-yard crossing routes are as dangerous, if not more, than the 60-yard post route. And I think it was something that Ben Johnson did a really good job of last year when JMO broke through for the first time, 1,000-yard season. He was running a wider, more diverse route tree, as the coaches like to call it. And if you look at his average depth of target in 2022 and 2023, his first two seasons when he was mostly just a vertical threat or a decoy, it was really high, one of the highest in the NFL. Well, last year under Ben Johnson, it came down to about league average, right around 11.6, so middle of the pack. And that allowed him to break through. He housed a couple plays where he was just running simple crossers or slants. And with Johnny Moe calling plays over the first 8 games, that spiked back up to, I think, 16 yards average depth of target, which was one of the highest marks in the NFL. Under Dan Campbell, this is crazy. It has come down to literally 11.6, where it was last year in 2 games. And voila, there's the explosive playmaker all across the field.
And now you get the running game rolling a little bit more consistently. I think what we saw with Goff and St. Brown is a one-off. They're not going to be like that.
That
history tells us that's not.
Yeah.
And now when you get JMO involved,
yeah.
And I just think that unlocks something. But again, it all starts with getting that consistent play up front, which they've got to do. All right, well, looking into New York, what jumps out? What maybe concerns you about the New York Giants? Is it maybe what we've been talking about with the offensive line and defensive line, or you got something new?
No, I think that's where I am. On paper, this is one of the best looking defenses in the NFL. On the field, not so much.
Right.
But you
Dexter
look at that
Lawrence,
defensive line.
The names on it.
4 first-round picks, including 2 top 5 picks, and despite Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter, they've allowed, I think, the 4th most points and 4th most yards in the league, and the most rushing yards per carry, 5.5. It's kind of hard to make sense of, and most of those guys have played in every game, but it just hasn't come together. So what concerns me is the possibility that Burns, can have a big day. He's having a huge year, 13 sacks in 11 games, second most in the NFL. And then if he does what he's been doing and one of those other 3 gets hot against a wounded offensive line, that's where the Giants could pose some problems. But I like this matchup for a defense that, as we both agree, needs to run the ball. They should be able to run it against that defensive front.
Yeah, they're 30th, along almost 150 yards on the ground per game. That's a lot of yards and a lot of big plays. Now, they're hurt on defense, and I agree with you. I think that's the biggest concern is those names up front along the defensive line. But they're going to get Jaxson Dart back this week, and I think that's an interesting one to look at too. A guy who plays an aggressive style for a rookie. He'll take some shots, and he's not afraid of running the football, putting his head down. Now, he missed last week because of a concussion, so he's got to be careful.
Sure.
Their head coach talked about that this week, about showing him some examples of some opportunities to slide or get out of bounds or just to be smarter. But look, well, he's got over 300 rushing yards.
Yeah.
He's got 7 touchdowns. I think he's got a touchdown run in 5 straight games that he's played. They're a much better football team when he's on the field.
Yeah.
And look, he can extend plays. He's got some opportunities to make some plays with his legs in the run game. And so, look, Detroit's been good against quarterbacks like that.
Yeah.
Look at what they did against Hurts. Look what they did against Lamar week 3. But still, I think that's an interesting dynamic that you have to worry about a little bit if you're Kelvin Sheppard.
Yeah, I bet when the Lions turn on the tape, the coaches here, they've got a lot of respect for Jaxson Dart. I could see Dan Campbell watching this guy compete with the moxie and fearlessness that he has and just saying, like, man, I like that dude. I think we'll hear Campbell talk pretty highly of Jaxson Dart's competitiveness this week. And it's otherwise a pretty ravaged offense. I mean, they're missing their best receiver in Malik Neighbors, who felt like he was going to be one of the best receivers in the league this year. Obviously, Cam Scatterbo was a sensation. Pretty tough to see him go down with a rather gruesome injury as well. So, you feel like if you can contain Hurts, they lack the playmakers around him to really, if you can contain Jaxson Dart, they lack the playmakers to really hurt you. But he is a fun quarterback to watch. Like, even from the stands or from the press box, you're going to have to be on your toes, because plays that might feel like they're destined to end in a sack or a tackle for loss, all of a sudden he breaks free and he's lowering his shoulder and he's making a guy miss, and maybe it's a 12-yard gain. So you have to finish the play against a quarterback like him.
0 for 5 on 4th down. That was a big storyline of that game. Obviously, one of the bigger reasons why they lost. You convert a couple of those 3rd downs that were 3 of 13, and obviously if you convert one of those 4th down, maybe that game in Philadelphia is a little different. Well, you expect after a game like that, you expect Campbell to be a little bit more conservative going forward. You smile because I know what I think you're about to say.
Yeah. If I were coaching, I would. But Dan is committed to this team's philosophy, and so I don't think he would, and I don't think he should have to against a defense like the Giants. Now, I think he might moving forward against defenses like Phillies or like Green Bay's, where there's a clear mismatch in the trenches.
Or the situation.
Or the situation, right.
Playoffs.
Sure.
Your offense is struggling.
100%.
Maybe you start to play that field position points game.
No doubt. And so I think in those cases, he might give it some more thought. I don't think that he should or will have to against this defense, but that was what I wrote yesterday. We do, right? Tim, Tim and I, we don't just sit here and talk on the camera, on the screen all day and into microphones. But that was kind of my takeaway from Sunday night, is that it might be time for Campbell to acknowledge the shifting identity of this team, and that this might be a team, as we said, led by its defense from here on out. And if that's the case in tight, low-scoring games, it might make more sense to kick field goals and to accrue points that way rather than chase touchdowns. I think over their first 4 seasons here, those 4th down attempts made sense so frequently because they had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And so if the NFL average on 4th and short was closer to 50%, it was closer to 2/3 in favor of the Lions because of that advantage they had up front. They could really move the line of scrimmage, and so it changed the calculus. But the calculus has changed again with a weakened, wounded O-line and with a really good defense. And so maybe in some of these tighter, lower-scoring games, if they have those, ideally in the playoffs, that's where you might see him take points or punt instead of chase those extra first downs.
I agree with you. I think he'll kind of reevaluate week to week and game to game and opponent and kind of just see where that game's going and have a better idea. And that might be a good thing, what happened last week. It's just a reminder, like, hey, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to punt this. I've got one of the best punters. Put them back. Their offense wasn't rolling. Your defense is playing so good. Let's play that kind of game. So we'll see if that's a difference going forward. Speaking of that defense, DJ Reed's back this week. How big of an addition is that? And is it a good problem now, Will, that, look, Terrion could be back this week too, and he was playing pretty good there before the concussion. And Amik has stepped outside and played really well filling in for Reed. Is it a good thing now? What do you do with Amik? What do you do with Terry? Do you split time? Does Amik just go back to playing the nickel? You've got a bunch of guys that can play now. Good good problem to have.
I think so, yeah. And it raises the dilemma of playing so much base defense. You want your best players in the field, but if you're going to stay in base defense, then I guess Amik has to come off the field. But he adds so much spunk and feistiness and just ability to this defense. He's played really well in coverage in some tough matchups too. So that'll be a fun puzzle for Kelvin Sheppard to kind of piece together. But I think the return of DJ Reed is huge. He was beginning to really find his stride before his injury. He was playing like the lockdown #1 corner they paid him to be. You go back to week 3, he eliminated Zay Flowers from that win over the Ravens. I mean, he was invisible for most of that night, and then he was doing the same thing in maybe a slightly easier matchup to Jerry Jeudy in week 4. He really was cementing himself, establishing himself as a clear cornerback who can travel with the opposing team's top receiver, and having him back is huge looking forward. There's some big matchups in the NFC playoff race this team has to take on. Dallas, who's kind of back from the dead now with Dak and George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, has all kinds of passing weapons and artillery, and then the Rams with Stafford and obviously Nakua and Devontae Adams. I believe those are back-to-back games for this team, and you're going to want all of the cover guys you can possibly have on the field for matchups like that. So, the fact that Reed's back, Terrion's hopefully back soon, and you have Amik kind of in the wings is a good thing at the right time.
And to your point on DJ Reed and just how well he was playing, 50%, that's opposing quarterbacks completing 50% of the passes thrown his way with a 44.1 passer rating.
That'll do it.
That'll do it.
That'll get the job done.
That's shutdown.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's
no
shutdown, and
doubt.
it's good to get that guy back. A biggest matchup you're looking forward to?
I really want to watch Burns versus Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a clash of the Titans type matchup, and we've seen it a couple times this year against some of the elite pass rushers. Always fun to watch Sewell kind of lock horns with those guys. I think that'll be a fun one to watch all game. Burns does rush from both sides, so it won't always be Penei. It'll be some Decker too, but we'll see how those two ends can handle him. And then I'll reiterate, I think the best matchup for the Lions this week is just running the ball against this
Gibbs.
against this defense that has been yielding leaking yards all season, especially lately. Last 5 games, Giants have allowed 6 yards per carry, 175 yards rushing per game. Like, they've just been leaking oil up front. So I think that when the tape comes on and the game plan comes out this week, John and Demo should be kind of, licking their chops, waiting to get into this defense.
I want to have a little fun with something. I know we're a little bit past midseason, but we're kind of right in that key stretch now going forward. I'm curious, offensively and defensively for this team, offensive MVP so far.
So I thought about this one for a little bit because you did fill me in on a couple topics ahead of time, and I was waffling between Jameer and Jared, and I eventually settled on Jared, and I know it's maybe not the right time to have that take after he has like the worst
the
game
career
of his
lowest
career
completion percentage
against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. It would have been easier to make this case last week, but I think the way he's played with a much different looking and performing offensive line and with a different OC and with a change-up play caller really speaks to how sharp he is and how in command he is of this offense. The numbers are clear. He's been great all season. The passer rating is top 5. The completion percentage is top 5. They were both top 1 and 2 before last week. But I think what goes understated or underappreciated is how much he does before the snap in the huddle at the line of scrimmage to get this offense operating the way it needs to. I go back to the JMO touchdown against the Commanders when Dan couldn't get that play call in before his communication with Jared shut off in Jared's helmet, and I think he only got out maybe half of it. And Jared is such a good student of the game that he was able to hear even a couple words and spit the rest of it out, get the guys lined up. They snap it with 1 second on the play clock. He finds JMO for a touchdown. That, to me, was like a great snapshot of how much he does that goes unseen for this offense.
For me, it's Jameer. And it was close. I thought about Jared, too. And Jared's had a great season. I think defenses have been pretty scared the last 2 weeks with what the Lions have shown. Obviously, Ja, the runner, has been huge in the explosiveness and the big plays he brings there, but we saw it in Washington with that Texas route. And then last week, getting him in space with over 100 receiving yards. I think that added element to his game that he's shown the last 2 weeks I think that's scary.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to be without Sam Laporta for some time now, that is going to be huge. I think they're going to need a lot more in the passing game from Ja. In the last 2 weeks, he's shown that he's capable of doing that.
Yep.
I think it's huge. I think this is a completely different offense without Jahmyr Gibbs. I give him the MVP early on.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs on a Texas route might be the most unstoppable or unguardable play in the NFL.
It is.
Like, that linebacker's like, come on. What are we doing?
I think even a safety would be like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
honestly. All right, defensively.
So waffled here between Aiden and Jack Campbell, and I went with Jack Campbell.
Okay.
I think Aiden is an
Aiden's
obvious
Aiden.
case he made. He's Aiden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the 5 or 10 best defensive ends in the NFL. Every team would kill to have a guy like that. I think the strides that Campbell has made across the board this year have turned him into one of the best linebackers in the NFL. This is the guy the Lions drafted 18th overall a couple years ago. When they said they viewed him as a defensive centerpiece, this is what they were talking about. And he was obviously dominant against the run from the moment he showed up. But he's really evolved as a pass rusher this year. 4 sacks, a career high, I think tied for the 3rd most on the team. And we talk about this run defense. He is their best run defender. Yeah. And he's maybe the best run defending linebacker in the NFL. Has played almost every darn snap this year. I just think if you removed him from this defense, it would look a whole lot different. He really has become, even in coverage a little bit, a do-it-all linebacker.
I said before the season I wouldn't be surprised at all if he had 150 tackles this season. He had 130. I think he's only the 4th line ever to have at least 90 tackles through a team's first 10 games. Chris Spielman's on that list a couple times.
Good company.
Good company.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you. I think he's kind of what makes that defense work. He's the green dot. He gets everybody lined up. He is what I don't think he gets enough credit for, and you hear Kelvin talk about it, you hear his teammates talk about it, it's his preparation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's Goff-like from the defensive side. Mm-hmm. When you've got a middle linebacker that plays like that, prepares like that, is tough as nails. I wish I was in that huddle when he had the hole, and he was like covering so he wouldn't spit blood on his teammates still making it. Like, he's a throwback.
I think one of them was like, "Are you good, dude?"
He's just a throwback. Like, he fits everything Detroit and Dan Campbell wants to be. And I think he's going to be a good linebacker in this league for a long, long time.
Yeah, there might be a distant relation between Dan Campbell and Jack Campbell. That would not surprise me. Maybe like 3rd cousins, twice removed or something. They're cut from the same cloth for sure.
All right, let's finish on this one. Everybody does power rankings. Real quick, I'm going to give you my top 5 in the NFC.
Okay.
And tell me if you agree, or tell me I'm an idiot. Number 1 for me, the Rams. Uh-huh. I just think that offense is elite. That defensive line can get after you. Yeah. They're like Detroit in a lot of ways, that they can beat you offensively and defensively when they're on point. Yeah. Philly's number 2 for me. Detroit's at 3. Seattle is 4. Don't sleep on the 49ers. Now that Brock Purdy's back, I know they're dealing with some injuries. They've lost some guys, but offensively, they're starting to get a few guys back. They're always going to play good defense over there. That's my 5. So I got Rams, Eagles, Lions, Seahawks, 49ers. What's your 5?
Yeah, I would consider swapping in Tampa for San Fran, just because they're kind of a battle-tested team under Todd Bowles, and even when they're down a bunch of players, they'll find a way to make you fight them. And Baker's a gamer. I have a lot of respect for his style of play. They seem to have found a new running back in this Sean Tucker, I think it is, who has made the absence of Bucky Irving kind of a moot point. I know they're all kinds of banged up, but that's a team that if and probably when they make the playoffs, could still put a scare into some of those big boys. As you know, we've seen firsthand here, they've given the Lions all they can handle, especially from their defensive side of things. So I think maybe that'd be the one swap that I would make. But I agree that LA is scary, man, and it's amazing how quickly they rebuilt themselves after going all in with the F them picks philosophy to win that first one under Stafford. They have emerged again as a real threat, and that young defensive line is a force to be reckoned with. That's the next, to me, major test for this Lions offense, because they play a lot like Philly and Green Bay do in that they don't blitz all that much. Like, obviously the Vikings caused problems. That was almost more scheme related and Flores related than just like mano-a-mano one-on-one.
Running back issues, not being able to pick those up. There are other factors there.
But
when you can only rush 4, though,
exactly.
It changes everything.
It changes everything. And that's what Green Bay can do. It's what Philly did last week, and it's what LA can do. So I know that's further on down the line, but that's looming as a major test for this offensive line.
Well, I know we went a little longer than I normally go
just
on
having
the first
too much
segment,
fun.
but we were. I enjoyed this. This was good stuff. You can catch Will, obviously, on X at
Burchie_kid. You can find me on there. You can find me on the 97.1 airwaves, Monday nights, Lions Review
Fox
with Dan and
2.
Woj, Fox 2, Sunday mornings, Sunday nights. You can't really avoid me.
No, you're everywhere. I like it. And look, this team hasn't lost back-to-back games since October of 2022. I think both of us expect a huge bounce back. Right. Then you've got Green Bay on Thanksgiving on a short week. We'll see where this team stands, and then LA and some of those are looming too. So it's the stretch run, but it should be a fun one.
I think they were in better shape than people might feel after that Eagles game. If you had offered, I think, a lot of fans through 10 games, 6 wins, given who they had played in the first 10 games, a lot of fans probably would have signed up for that. I think 6-4 quickly becomes 9-4, and I think the mood around this team will shift pretty dramatically in the next few weeks.
You control your own destiny. The 1 seed, I think, will be a little tough with that loss to Philly, but you control your destiny in the NFC North. That's home playoffs. That's coming through Detroit. So I think everything's sitting in front of them.
Bears aren't real.
They're in a fine spot.
I'll be the one to say it.
Thanks for joining me, Will.
I
appreciate it as always. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast. Very happy to welcome in Thomas Harper, one of those guys who has stepped in, played a role, and been one of, in my opinion, one of the unheralded heroes on this football team. First off, let's go back. Let's talk about how you got into football, because I think it's an interesting story. You're a basketball player growing up. You don't even start to play football till your sophomore year in high school. What prompted you, and when did you first fall in love with football then?
I would say I fell in love with it the first season that I started playing.
That sophomore year?
Yeah, like my first ever play of tackle football, like in high school, was a kickoff return, and I ended up scoring it. So it was like, okay, this may be my avenue.
So you're a receiver, you're a defensive back. Your junior year, you become the first player ever at Carnes High School in Knoxville to have a 1,000-yard season. Do it again your senior year. And then you get that opportunity to play in college. Now, you played at Oklahoma State with Rodrigo, right?
Yep.
Now, he started as a safety, right? What was Malcolm the safety like? I'm curious.
He was there before. He would play safety before I got there.
Okay.
So I didn't get to see
So he had already made the switch to linebacker?
Right. But I heard he was good, though. I heard he used to come down and really, like,
really?
Yeah, I heard he was nice.
So you play at Oklahoma State, do a great job there. You transfer to Notre Dame for your final season, start and play there. You go undrafted with the Chargers. You get an opportunity in Las Vegas. And how key was just getting that opportunity in the NFL for you? And then you made the most of it.
It was huge. Like I say, if you look at the numbers, there's not a lot of people that end up making it to the league. So it was huge. And then I think as far as me just taking advantage of it, just always being ready and always having that faith and knowing that my opportunity will come.
You sign in Detroit. Kirby has the injury. You step in. Look, there was one game there where you had 4 starters out in the secondary,
right?
The Legion of Whom they called it, or whatever it was. But you just, what has allowed you to be able to step in, play these minutes, play key downs, make plays, and been a big part of kind of keeping the standard in the secondary?
I think it all comes down to preparation. Kind of like I mentioned, I think just knowing that it's an opportunity and knowing that it could always come at any moment and just being ready to take advantage of it whenever it happens, I think that's the biggest thing, because, I mean, it's hard to be a backup, know you're not really going to play, but still be in the playbook like you're going to play. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just having that faith that I'm going to get my opportunity and then being ready whenever it happens.
This just seems like a great fit for your game, your skill set. What was it about Detroit, this defense, that just seems to fit you?
I would say just you got to be versatile in this defense, and I think versatility is something that I definitely have. Like I played in college, I was a nickel. In the league, I played nickel and safety, mainly safety. So I just think playing nickel in college really helped me with my versatility and being able to be different pieces in the puzzle.
Oh, how was playing receiver? And that's how you started. That's how you kind of made your mark in the game. How does playing receiver help you as a nickel, a safety?
I think I would say ball skills for sure. I think knowing how to like track the ball and stuff like that, and then just route combinations.
Defense is finally getting the credit it deserves here. Just how fun is this defense to be a part of? Your top 10 in scoring, overall defense, pass, run, red zone, takeaways. I mean, you name the category, you guys are top 10 in that. How fun of a group is this to play with and just be part of what Sheppard's building here?
Man, it's really fun. This is probably one of the best defenses I've been on for sure. Like, as far as just him trusting us to go out and execute, and then him calling it, and I mean, it's fun. It allows you to just play around, fly around, have fun, and then, I mean, most importantly, I think it gives us opportunities to make plays.
One of the things that both Dan Campbell and Sheppard have always talked about is if you show us that you can play, we'll give you an opportunity to play. And it hasn't just been lip service with them. They've run a lot of different guys in there. If you show them in practice, or if because of injury you get an opportunity to play and you play, they're going to play you and they're going to stay with you. How much as a player do you appreciate that they have that kind of mindset? And as a player, does that make you just stay on your P's and Q's every day and be ready for the opportunity? Because you guys should know that if you get the opportunity, they're going to keep running with you. How much do you appreciate that?
Man, it's huge. It's honestly huge. It's hard to find that in this league. I think it allows you to go out there and be yourself. You don't have to. You're not trying to be perfect. You're not trying to. It just allows you to go out there and be yourself. And it's okay if you make a play, or it's okay obviously if you make a play, but it's okay if you miss a play or miss a call. As long as you out there making plays, being yourself, just knowing that they're going to have trust in you is huge.
We talked a little bit about this on the way up. It's just you guys have had to play so many different guys. How can you see that as an advantage coming down the stretch and maybe into the playoff push, that you guys have had to rely on so many different guys, especially in the secondary? Maybe some other teams haven't, and you guys have showed you can battle through that. How important is that for you guys going down the stretch?
Huge. Like we talked about coming up here, I think a lot of times when it happens, it's like, oh, it's too late. It's like, oh, we don't know if he can do this. We don't know if he can do that. Everything, us getting injuries early on and having to figure it out early on definitely will benefit us on the back end of the season.
What do you like most about playing for Shep? What do you like most about this defense, whether it's schematically, anything else that happens during the week? What do you like about being part of this defense in particular?
I would say I like the versatility. Like, I've never been in a defense where we can run any defense. We can run man.
And you play base more than anybody else,
right.
too.
We can run man. We can run zone. Like, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever is the kryptonite of the offense that we're playing, like, it's just like we pick your poison and we can do it. So I think I've never been on a defense that was able to do that. So I think that's the most fun part.
One word that describes Kelvin Sheppard. We have to keep it PG, too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't even know if I can say that. I would say, I think he's a wizard.
Wizard.
A wizard is what I would call him. Wizard is what I would call him.
A wizard. I think Lions fans are going to love that, too. Because he is smart, and he's been in your position before. He's played, right. And it just seems like he can adapt to what offenses do to you, or try to do to you guys every week. And there's not a lot of guys that can do it. Some guys just have their system. That's what we play. That's what we do.
Right.
We'll adapt a little bit, but it looks like you guys change it up.
I'm telling you, like, the bag of tricks that he has is crazy, and they have the trust in us to be able to go from different defenses, so it's huge.
Tell me about the Giants a little bit, just what you guys see this week. You get back at home. You got a nice 3-game stretch here at home. Starts off with New York. Jaxson Dart's a guy that can run around a little bit, sling it a little bit. What have you seen from them on film? What's the biggest challenge this week?
I think it always comes down to stopping the run. I think we need to be able to stop the run, and then get them one-sided to where we know that they're going to throw the ball and make them throw the ball, force them to throw the ball, because I think they're leading the league in, like, rushing attempts or something like that. Yeah. So they're definitely going to try to run the ball. So stopping the run is key.
Wait, man, you've been a huge part of what this team has done defensively. You stepped right in for Kirby, and you haven't skipped a beat. And you're one of those guys that just kind of fits, and I think one of those guys that have been important for this defense to be what it is. Keep doing your thing, and good luck to you on Sunday.
Appreciate that.
Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. Very happy to welcome in Matthew Citak. Does a great job as a managing editor at Giants.com. Matthew, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, well, let's start right away. The quarterback situation with Jaxson Dart is kind of, where's that trending? Is there a possibility he plays Sunday, or are we going to see Jameis Winston again?
Yeah, so as we speak at 12 noon on Wednesday, Jaxson Dart is still in the concussion protocol. Interim head coach Mike Kafka is going to speak to the media in about 30 minutes, and I'm sure the first question he will be asked is what's going on with Jaxson Dart. Now, he was spotted on the practice field this past Friday. He was a DNP. He did not participate, but he was out there. So that would, be a positive sign. And hopefully he's cleared in time for Sunday's game. If not, it'll be another week of Jameis Winston.
How are the Giants different with Jaxson? Obviously, the rushing ability, over 300 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. But with this concussion stuff, is he going to be the same kind of aggressive player? Just, I guess, first off, how are they different offense with him, without him? And then if we do see him on Sunday, how might he maybe be a little bit different just in terms of trying to protect himself a little bit more?
Yeah, well, you touched on the biggest difference is clearly Jackson's rushing ability and just his mobility in general. I mean, Jaxson has 50 or more rushing yards, and I believe 5 of his 7 starts. He's got a rushing touchdown in all but I think one of his 7 starts. So he adds another dimension to this offense that, the 30-something-year-old Jameis Winston just does not. And in addition to just the rushing, it's just his ability to move around and extend plays that Jameis Winston at this point of his career does not, do quite as well. In terms of what Jackson's rushing might look like for the remainder of the season, we don't really know for sure, but Coach Mike Kafka did say that he doesn't really want to take away Jackson's ability to create plays with his legs. He doesn't want to take that part of his game away. Now, I think they're going to encourage him, as they have been, to get down and sort of slide and not take quite
a young man slide.
Yeah, and not take quite as many hits. But, it's tough to tell a 22-year-old that's trying to fight for a first down or fight to get across the goal line to dive down and, not try to fight for that extra yardage when all of his teammates are fighting for those extra yardage. So it remains to be seen, but I do think that the rushing is still going to be a very big part of his game.
You look at the Giants, obviously 2 wins on the season, not what they had hoped or probably expected. But when you look at this team, Matthew, what are the strengths of this Giants team coming on the road in Detroit, facing a Lions team that needs a bounce back win at home on Sunday?
Yeah, so the offense is, based on how the last couple of seasons have gone, it's a little, I guess, surprising to say, but the offense has been more of a strength for the team this year than the defense. And it's really started with Jaxson Dart at quarterback. I mean, he's really helped raise the floor of the entire offense. He's helped the pass game get going. Theo Johnson, our tight end, is having, has, I believe, 5 or 6 receiving touchdowns already, well more than he had last year as a rookie. Jaxson has been spreading the ball around. Obviously, Malik Neighbors suffered a torn ACL all the way back in week 4, Jackson's first start. And while it was a tough blow to lose, obviously, one of the more talented receivers in the NFL, it has sort of forced Jaxson to spread the ball around to all the pass catchers in the offense a little bit more. So I would say definitely the offense, Jaxson Dart, and surprisingly, the offensive line, our offensive line, which again has been somewhat of an Achilles heel in previous years. They've been playing really solid football. Obviously, They have a very tough test this week going up against Aiden Hutchinson, that entire Lions defensive front. But the O-line really has done, better than expected, both in terms of pass protection and the run game. Last week, Tyrone Tracy kind of got going for the first time since taking over for Cam Scadaboo, who was lost back in week 7 to a season-ending injury. So offense overall, I would say, has been more of a strength. The defense has struggled, especially the last, I would say, month or so. And of course, this week's game's potentially the toughest challenge all year for the Giants defense going up against that Lions offense.
No, it's a good point on the offensive line because, the Packers are a pretty good run defense. I think it was over 140 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns against the Packers. I think the Packers, Detroit, and 6 other teams, there's only 8 teams that hold opponents on average to less than 100 rushing yards per game. Green Bay was one. Detroit's another one that they'll face, this week. We'll see if they can keep that rolling, but they have run the ball better, and that obviously, helps a young quarterback too. Look, you mentioned it a little bit there when you talk about the offense. When you look at this Giants roster, especially defensively up front with some of the names that they have, Abdul Carter, Burns, Thibodeau, why hasn't it kind of, been more effective defensively? You look at them, they're 29th in points, 29th in total defense, but they've got some guys up front that, are really good. Burns leads the NFC in sacks with 13. Why hasn't it just come together more as a collective unit for that Giants defense?
Yeah, so coming into the season, we all expected that defensive front to really be the biggest strength of the entire team on both sides of the ball. And quite frankly, that just has not been the case so far. Brian Burns, as you mentioned, he's having a phenomenal season, a career year, but the guys around him have just not quite stepped up. Dexter Lawrence, he's coming off a season-ending elbow injury from last year. Maybe that's hindering his, playmaking ability a little bit. He's also still facing in a league-high double-team rate that, last year he was able to fight through that and still be a force in the pass rush. It hasn't quite happened the same this year. Kayvon Thibodeau started off the season really strong. I believe it was 4.5 sacks in the first month, but has not really done much since. And then Abdul Carter is getting pressures. It's just he has not been able to translate the pressures into sacks quite yet. He only has half a sack, but I believe he still leads all rookies in pressure. So he is getting after the quarterback. He just hasn't been able to translate them into sacks quite yet. And then in terms of the rest of the defense, Giants lost Micah McFadden, one of their starting middle linebackers, all the way back in week 1. And then that second spot next to Bobby Okereke in the middle of the defense has sort of been a bit of a revolving door between just guys getting hurt. This past week, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles was starting next to Bobby Okereke, and the Giants signed him originally to primarily be a special teams guy. And now he's actually stepped up and played pretty well these last couple of weeks and is looking at an extended opportunity because Darius Muasau, who first filled in for Micah McFadden, he's now on injured reserve. So Flanagan-Fowles will have an opportunity to keep this going, but the Giants have also just been decimated with injuries in the secondary. I mean, I know that the Lions have as well.
Know how that goes.
Yeah. Giants have been without Paulson Adebo for about a month now. They just got Javon Holland back, the starting safety. Cordell Flott missed the game, which has led to Deontay Banks getting extended action. So there's just been a lot of injuries outside of the defensive front, which has not helped. But yeah, that foursome up front, which was supposed to be the biggest strength outside of Brian Burns, has just not quite lived up to expectations yet so far this season.
The Lions haven't lost back-to-back football games since October of 2022. That's a long time, obviously the longest stretch in the league. So, Matthew, how did the Giants go on the road and upset a Detroit team that doesn't lose back-to-back games? What's the recipe there? What has to happen for the Giants to accomplish that?
Look, I'm not going to lie. When I was watching Sunday Night Football this past week, I was not happy to see the Eagles win that game and the Detroit offense kind of struggle because obviously you guys have had one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL for the last 3.5 seasons. So the fact that you guys are held to, just 9 total points, that scared me because I was expecting or now expect, Dan Campbell and the whole offense to look for a real big bounce back. And for us, the Giants, to prevent that from happening, I think it starts first and foremost with doing the best to slow down the run game. Yeah. Because obviously everyone knows Detroit wants to run the football. You have probably the best running back duo with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and the Giants' run defense has been they've struggled this year, to say the least, especially this last month or so. Emmanuel Wilson filled in for Josh Jacobs last week. Wasn't the most efficient, but he did enough, got into the end zone, did enough to cause some damage. Josh Jacobs, before the injury, was averaging over 5.5 yards per carry against the Giants. So if the Giants can slow down David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and I expect both of those running backs to be fed a lot of carries in this game, that would go a long way in helping the Giants have a chance to keep up with this high-powered Detroit offense.
What's a key matchup you're looking forward to watching?
Probably Andrew Thomas whenever he's matched up against Aiden Hutchinson, because that's best on best. Aiden Hutchinson, obviously one of the best defenders in the NFL. I have so much respect for him. I think should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. And Andrew Thomas, since coming back from the foot injury that suffered last year in week 3, he's been, I think, one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Has really done great in pass protection. So that matchup is definitely going to be, get your popcorn ready.
Matthew, I know you got some availability to run to. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. Safe travels up here, and it's two teams looking for a kind of a big bounce back win after losses last week. A big test for New York coming into Ford Field against an angry Lions team that feel like they didn't play very well, and we'll see if the Giants can hang around and maybe have the upset. Safe travels. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.